So, I was hanging out with friends randomly, and I got this topic for a video, which is, what if I talk a little bit about what my experience is like since I've become a larger YouTuber in the scene? Because something's definitely changed after YouTube, to say the least. I mean, hard to say otherwise. But yeah, I figured I'd talk a little bit about like some of my thoughts, some of my experiences, some of the things that have changed over time. Why don't we get one of the more obvious ones out of the way? It is very awkward talking to like almost anyone in the Splatoon scene at like, you know, like in terms of like getting to know someone who already has a perception of me. Like pretty much anyone I will talk to or meet in the scene knows me from YouTube content to some extent. Even if they don't actively watch my videos, they'll like have some perception of who I am. I've gotten into a friend group recently where there's people who are barely familiar with the Splatoon scene, or not really invested anyway. And even there, it's like, yeah, people have like a general idea that I'm like a content creator. They know who I am, that kind of deal, right? Which is always a little awkward. I know it's not an experience unique to me, but there's definitely like some perspective of like, I can't really meet people and have them not know who I am like that. It's more people will get to know, you know, the version of me that's not a YouTuber, I guess. But it's always going to start with that perception, which is, I don't know, it's different for sure. And it definitely, like, I don't know, I definitely can say I've interacted a lot less with the Splatoon scene. I'm hanging out with a lot more groups that are outside of the Splatoon scene. Obviously, I still have a whole ton of friends and connections from that scene, but it is something that I have seen changing more over time, and, like, I think it'll continue to develop that way, where, you know, talking to people who don't know me as much from YouTube has been kind of nice, honestly. It's been different. Obviously, I get talked about a good bit. There is, like, a lot of people will like to do memes with my name, or talk about the content that I do, or stuff like that. And so I've gotten to read, like, a billion people's opinions on, like, the content I produce, or the weapons I play, or, like, basically anything. And that's been a whole other aspect of it, you know. I think for a lot of people, they don't have to hear too much about themselves outside of their own little circle, whereas for me, I have heard thousands of people's opinion on me on the internet, which is, you know, it's a little awkward, I guess. It's something where I don't think too much of it right now, but I think the first, like, year or two especially, where I was really growing and seeing a lot of this stuff, it was definitely something that I thought about a lot. It's, like, can be a lot of pressure, to say the least. And I definitely think it's changed how I've presented my content over time. I've definitely gotten more mellow, I want to say, with my overall, like, opinions and stuff on the game, or at least how I choose to present them, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but I do think it's something that's changed, where, like, I'm a bit more conscious of how, like, I can, like, I don't know, accidentally, like, say something that might come across as harsh to, like, a certain weapon player base or something, right? And I now think about those kind of things a lot more in terms of, like, how I make my content and how I word exactly what I'm trying to say. I think it's overall a positive change. I definitely could be a bit over the top sometimes before, so it's kind of something that I think fits me a little bit better anyway. But it was a change that was sprung more from that kind of audience perception. LANs are something that's a lot different. You know, like actual in-person events where I obviously get approached a lot at them. Most of the time it's fine. There's a few instances where people will come up to me, like after losing a tournament set or something. Guys, this isn't the time to go get a signature or a picture or anything, you know. It's not the best time. But really, I've been lucky to not have too many negative experiences at LANs, especially for, like, the size of content creator that I'm at. I know that can be a problem for a lot of people, and for the most part, I've had positive experiences. I do end up signing a lot of posters. I wish I had a signature that just used, like, one letter or something smaller, because it would have saved me so much time. I don't really do photos anymore at LANs. I used to, but I haven't done it as much, mostly because that takes even more time. And I think, like, most LANs that I'll go to, I'll be signing at least 100 posters, if not more. It might not seem like a crazy amount, but I end up meeting and talking with a whole lot of people, which I don't mind, by the way. You know, it is good to, like, get in touch with more of the community, you know, and it's very nice hearing a lot of your guys' stories about, like, how you started competitive, or what you did, or, like, anything like that. And I enjoy being able to meet people and, like, be able to say hi, and the community is very nice, so LANs can be a big source of motivation for me, and I'd say ultimately I have a really good experience there. So there are occasional times where I was like, yeah, it'd be cool if I could just walk around and not get approached, like, all the time, but I don't really mind that it does happen. It's just like, yeah, this is different, you know? That's fine. I'd say, like, another aspect is probably pressure a lot. Like, anything I post is being reached with a lot of eyes. Any tournament I do is going to have a lot more eyes on it. Any, like, result that I get, or, like, any real conversation about me has, like, a lot more attention on it than usual. So there's definitely a lot of pressure to, like, perform to a certain extent, whether that was competitive in my, you know, when I competed, or if it's, like, doing content creation, or really any of the sort. Even talking with friends casually, I can feel like there's a bit more pressure just because people already, like, again, back to the first point, know who I am to some extent. So it's something where I have to think about it. Streams are also different because of it. When I streamed, like, a long time ago, it was just a few people that I knew in my chat and a few viewers. But for the most part, the people I were talking to were people that I already knew. Now, like, 95% of my chat is, like, just viewers that I don't really actually know. You know, occasionally someone will be in my chat who I actually talk to. I'll have a back and forth with them. But it's, like, such a small amount of the time. Whereas earlier it was like, yeah, this was actually the majority of the experience was talking with someone who I already knew to some extent. That's definitely made streaming a lot harder. But that's fine. You know, I don't think that's necessarily a big deal or anything. Larger stream chats are definitely harder to manage, but I've gotten a little bit better, and I'd say it's an overall fun experience. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely more I could talk about. I didn't want to get too personal with this video, so I'm keeping it pretty vague. But, you know, I think that things have definitely changed for sure. More interactions outside of my sphere has helped a lot. And it's definitely changed my ability to interact with the Splatoon scene in a way. I always have to keep in mind that people are seeing me from, like, a perception of what I'm like from my content, which is not, you know, the same as I will interact with people when I'm, like, friends with them and we're hanging out and stuff like that. So, you know, there's always going to be that bit of difference. And I'd just like to reaffirm that out there, you know, if you watch my content or something, you don't know who I am. Most people get that. There will be a few that don't, though, so I just like to affirm that. I try to keep my content and personal lives as separate as I possibly can, so, you know, that's just how I see it. And yeah, I appreciate all the support, of course. It's been nice doing content overall, even if it's been a lot different. Yeah, this is just some of my perspective, and I hope it was interesting. Alright, thanks for watching.